Firing him destroys the company quarter, but keeping him destroys the culture. In that, what is the only correct answer?
If you keep your ego, you would be stuck in that question, you would waste a lot of time.
Do you actually read the questions or do you just speed click?
Definitely speed clicks.
XAT isn't just a difficult exam, it's a different mental game altogether. You have a choice, 99 percentile in quants, but 70 percentile in DM or 85 percentile in both. Which one gets you the interview? If you're listening to this, the CAT exam is over, but the most sophisticated test of the year is just beginning. XAT isn't just a difficult exam, it's a different mental game altogether. Today's episode is not just about the syllabus, it's about the survival strategy for January 4th. To help you shift the gear, I have brought in two people who have not just survived XAT but have also conquered it. First, we have Ishan, who has scored a massive 98.98 percentile. He is our strategist for the day. And sitting next to him is Deven. He has scored a 95.09 percentile. He is a tactical sniper for the day. He knows exactly which questions to skip and which ones are the trap. Okay, Ishan and Deven, a lot of students are carrying CAT baggage right now. And someone who performed poorly in CAT mocks, does that trauma help them or hurt them in XAT?
Basically, I don't feel it will haunt you for 1 or 2 days, but again, your strategy needs to be come out and start working for that, because that is an important exam. It can get you to colleges.
Okay, what I meant to ask was, is that actually a second chance or is it just another harder beast?
That was actually a second chance for me. I scored not as well in CAT, but I ended up doing pretty well in that because I took that opportunity of failure in CAT as a way to do better in that rather than have a defeatist attitude and just be down in the dumps.
Ishan, let's play a game. You are the HR manager in a XAT caselet. Your star performance brings in at least 80% of the revenue, but has been caught, fudging in some small expenses. Firing him destroys the company quarter, but keeping him destroys the culture. So in real life, we could just slap his wrist. But in XAT, what is the only correct answer?
I think the way XAT typically looks at a decision-making caselet is you should look at the stakeholders and look at it from an ethical angle. Like value all the stakeholders, be it your employees, all the customers that you're serving and the company as a whole. And you'll always have to look at it from an ethical angle. So you can't just keep that employee in who's doing something bad just because he brings in the revenue. Because an ethical business is a sustainable business. So if you do keep him, then in the future, your company might suffer even more. But if you choose to fire him, you might do better in the future because you're taking out a bad element from the company in a way.
So we don't really go from a business point of view, but we also think from ethical point of view.
I think ethics matters more in the case of XAT or any decision-making caselet rather than a pure profit or loss situation.
They say that decision-making section has no right answer. It's just the least wrong one. So how do you go about it?
Yes, there are answers which are similar to each other, but then you go with the elimination technique. Basically, you start eliminating options which have extreme words, in my opinion. So yes, ultimately you'll reach a point where you'll find only 2 options available to you after eliminating. So you pick the one that seems to be right and not much.
What is the strategy for eliminating those 2 options?
You will find something that would make the sentence go a little off, using some negative words or some extreme opinions. So you will start eliminating that.
Yeah, so I feel the same because usually out of the 4 options, there's at least one option which seems very out of place. Like it would not make sense at all. So that leaves us with 3 options. And one of these options would probably be an extremist option, be it on the extremely positive side or the extremely negative side, which you would have to eliminate. So usually you are left with 2 options, which you have to then work out, which maximizes the not just shareholder, the stakeholders' integrity in every way. All the stakeholders get the maximum amount of benefit from that one option.
So the 2 options that you're left with seems both right.
Yeah, probably. But one would benefit your stakeholders more than the other, even if it's just like a 1 or 2% more benefit.
Okay. So everyone fears the XAT poem. You may probably read a 4-line stanza about a lonely cloud and suddenly you'll have to answer, what the poet feels about the Industrial Revolution. So how do you crack this? How do you get to the answer? Is there, without being a poet, without having to, deeply understand the meaning of the poem? Or is there a cheat code to it?
So in my opinion, you don't go deep, because if you try to understand every word, every line of it, you would get stuck in between. So the idea is not to go deep down, but understand the context of the poem to understand what is the overall structure of the poem. So is it a positive one, is it a negative one, and accordingly answer. If you go deep between it, you won't be able to understand every word of it because that has a heavy vocabulary. So the idea is not to get deep inside, but to accordingly answer, understanding the context, inferences, and all those stuff.
But how do you come to the conclusion at the surface level without being a poet, without trying to become a poet?
At its core, I believe XAT is an aptitude exam at the end of the day. It's not really a literature paper that you need to truly understand the meaning of what the lines actually mean. Usually the options are pretty obvious. Like honestly, as far as I've seen, the options are pretty obvious because most of the options go by the literal meaning of what the lines actually mean. Whereas one or two options would go for a more abstract meaning. And if you have decent common sense, I think you'd be able to eliminate the wrong option and go for the right one.
XAT's verbal section is heavily relying on critical reasoning. So if you had to pick one section, inferences, assumptions, or strengthening arguments, that students must master in these last 30 days, which one would you suggest that would yield them the most marks?
So, in my opinion, again, they should practice a lot of inferences question, because if you look at XAT 2025 paper, you would see a lot of questions based on inferences. So they need to master inferences, practice a lot on that, because there are chances where you would make mistakes in inferences. So that requires a lot of practice. So in the last 30 days, the trick is to just brush up upon strengthening and weakening, because in those times you won't be able to grasp the concepts of those. But inferences, I feel can fetch you marks.
But we are talking about last year's CAT, right?
Yes.
But they may change the pattern this year. So I am asking from a point of view, like which of these sections is relatively easier for you to grasp or easier for anyone to grasp that can yield you most marks?
I still feel it's the inferences topic, because that does not require you to understand the basics and all, but just like you would have to have that common sense to crack those questions, crack those inferences, get the context of the whole essay.
Okay.
So
how about you?
And I think adding on to Deven's point, assumptions are a catalyst to get your inference. So I believe if you truly master inferences, then you'd definitely side by side master assumptions as well, because it is a part of getting your inference.
All right. Ishan, today's exam day, you see a geometry question, you start solving it, you have already passed 3 minutes and you don't have an answer. Would you spend 2 more minutes trying to solve it, or would you just quit? Like, how do you manage your ego at that point of time?
I think that's where most students actually mess up, because they would fall for the sunken cost fallacy and actually end up to spending more and more time just because they believe that I practice so much, so I must invest this X amount of time just because I put X amount of hours into doing this topic. But that's not necessarily how it works, because it is an exam for a management school, a business school. So you have to learn how to manage your time, how to manage your resources. If you're not coming to an answer, if you don't see an answer in sight at all, then you should give it up, because there are easier questions in XAT or any basically aptitude exam which would require lesser time and would actually be easier and more beneficial for you in the long run.
Okay. Do you have something to add?
Just to add upon his point, the aim of the aptitude test is how you manage your ego. If you keep your ego, you would be stuck in that question, you would waste a lot of time. And might be that the question they put upon the geometry part might be difficult than all of the other questions combined. So you need to identify which are the questions that you can do easily in less amount of time. There would be questions based on profit and loss, arithmetic, basic arithmetic. So you need to first do that, and then if you have time left, come back to that question. If you have practiced enough, if you are confident on the topic, just attempt that.
What was your favorite section?
Mine was profit and loss. The easiest section. It does not require you to take out every inch of video. You see the question, you know what to do, and you get the answer in jiffy.
Okay, so if I were to put you in that situation, profit and loss was your favorite section, right? If this had happened in profit and loss section, because you master this section and you are very confident about it, but still you have passed 2-3 minutes and you still don't have an answer, what would you do?
I would simply leave it. I would not keep my ego, because the aim is to crack the exam, not just that question.
So XAT DI sets are notorious for looking terrifying, right? Dense text, complex charts, missing tables. So if you have, let's say, last 15 minutes left and you have 2 questions there. One is slightly short look wise, but is very complex with charts and all. Another one is very lengthy, text heavy, but doesn't have charts and all. So which one is usually the trap, or which one would you pick?
So I believe, in my opinion, that the shorter, more complex one with more charts would definitely be easier in a way, because charts don't necessarily mean that the question is hard. As long as you have a quantitative value, you can definitely, like if there are 5 options, you can definitely answer 2 or 3 options just from the surface value and just from basic arithmetics. You don't have to go deep and find a missing not or missing number which would fit in and make you complete rest of the set. So as long as you are able to like just do basic arithmetics, you'll definitely get like 2 or 3 options out of it, and rest of the time you can utilize on the longer set.
Do you mean to say that one can just get to the answer by looking at the surface level and they just look terrifying but are not really complex?
Yeah, they are not really complex. No, not all of the options at least, because there will be 1 or 2 options which would require a deeper amount of calculation and a lot more time invested. But you don't have to necessarily go for them. You just have to go for the easier ones which you can answer right off the bat within 5 minutes or so. Then the other 10 minutes you can spend on the longer set.
Okay. And what do you think?
I agree on his point that few of the questions can be solved very easily just looking at the question on the surface level. But if you have very less time to read 2 of the DI sets, I would go for the longer one, because these are the simpler questions.
Okay.
The text just looks heavy, but ultimately you'll be able to figure out the answers very quickly.
But won't you be spending a lot of time reading through all the text?
My strategy during my XAT preparation was not to read the whole question word by word, but just skim through it, come to question, check the points which would check the question, go back to the topic and see what are the points that are necessary for me to arrive to the solution. So that would be the strategy. Then that should be the strategy if you have less time during the XAT exam.
Got it. Okay, let's start with the rapid fire now. Your registration for XAT exam closes on December 5th. Your friend asked on December 4th if they should apply or not. They haven't studied at all. Yes or no?
I would definitely say yes, although it does depend on the preparation for CAT.
January 4th, the exam day. You open the paper. Which section would you open first to calm your nerves?
I would go by sequence. That would be my strategy.
Definitely verbal, because numbers scare me. So quant is scary.
You have a choice: 99 percentile in quants, but 70 percentile in DM, or 85 percentile in both. Which one gets you the interview?
I think 85 percentile in both, because that would fetch you a higher overall percentile.
GK section, 10 minutes. Do you actually read the questions, or do you just speed clicks to save mental energy for the exit?
Definitely speed clicks, because you would still have time if you speed click and answers the questions. Because in case of static questions and current affairs, you would know the answer if you read the question once, so you won't have to spend time.
I personally believe in speed clicking as well, because realistically GK has no weightage, although it is pretty controversial, but I do believe that the GK section has no weightage. It is for you as a person rather than for the exam. So I would probably speed click through it all.
Okay, but what if you get all the answers wrong?
I think that's a pretty high, it would be very unlucky for you, but that's very unlikely, because you would at least know 1 or 2 out of them.
Chance are low, because current affair questions you would definitely know, or you must have heard about it, even though when you're preparing. And as an person who's appearing for aptitude test, the basic is you should read through the newspapers.
Okay. And lastly, if a student has only 2 hours every day for next 30 days, which activity should they focus more on to get the highest ROI in exam? Should it be mocks, A on essays, or whatever it is?
Definitely mocks, because I believe mocks give the highest yield, because you go through the whole paper, not just the sections, but the whole paper, as in the time limit as well. So you'll have to know how to pace yourself in each section, how much time you can allow to each section, each question, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. I think a mock is the best way to go about it.
Okay. And I think we are almost done with all the questions. Lastly, is there any advice that you would want to give to students who have just probably 25-30 days left to the exam? How should they go about it, the overall strategy for that exam?
So the idea is to just go through the past year papers, because that has a regular pattern and similar pattern in all of their every examination. So idea is you give sectional mocks for past year papers. That would help you improve upon your knowledge on how the pattern is, how effectively you can answer those in that.
So I believe the best strategy for the last month should be to go for mocks. Because at this point you should already know your strengths and weaknesses, but you should at this point try to apply them. Where should you apply your strengths, where should you apply your weaknesses, and how do you best maximize your marks? Like you should probably aim to maximize a singular section and be average or above average in the other 2 sections. So that is how you should go about it.
And by this time you have already given your CAT exam. So what are some key takeaways that one should take from CAT exam as well to not make the same mistakes in that exam?
So I definitely say don't get too cocky if you did too well in CAT, or don't get too depressed if you did too bad in CAT, because either of those will hurt you in your XAT, and XAT is as important if not a little bit more important than CAT, I would say, because it is a bit easier to score in XAT because you have way more time. So you're not restricted by time, you're only restricted by your own knowledge.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Ishan, Deven, for your time. And I hope this conversation helped all these AT aspirants to ace the exam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.